So what I see from this conversation is more like a split between two different conceptions of liberalism. One is on liberalism as an adjective, more as live or let live kind of mentality. And another conception of liberalism is a specific set of precepts, basically individualism plus inalienable human rights. So I wonder, how do you make sense of this split, and whether these two different conceptions can have certain, overlap? More specifically, if you see liberalism as simply a set of ideology or precepts, how would you confront the issue of hyper-individualism embedded in liberalism, given that tribalism is a fact of life and the death of community is also part of the problem?
Yeah, can I
Well, let Osita was nodding his head, so.
Well, I think it's a fantastic question. I want to get to this divide, because I think you're right that what we're dealing with here are two fundamentally different conceptions of what liberalism is. On my end, you have a conception that I think is informed by reading the liberal political tradition. And then you have a sense that is kind of more amorphous, that liberalism, it relates to each other. It deals with how we relate to each other in a kind of, in a kind of spirit or a kind of set of habits that we practice in life. I think is kind of wishy-washy, to be honest with you. But I think that is fundamentally the divide. And that speaks to, again, the sense that these questions are hard. I don't think we should sort of just casually say and imply that people who come to different positions are necessarily at war with certain principles. I keep coming back to this because we hear it over and over and over again. This idea that if you were campus progressive and you didn't like this speaker on campus, you are somehow part of the legacy of Joseph Stalin. You are a Maoist. You are somebody who is reviving the Salem witch trials. This kind of escalatory rhetoric about disputes that I don't think has to go there. If we sort of understood that liberalism is complex, and the people who don't necessarily disagree on certain principles, I know that, James, even though you have this other definition of liberalism, you agree with me that individual rights are central to the conception of what liberalism is. I just don't think that we have to get to a place where we say, well, this person, because they disagree with me, is fundamentally opposed to the principles that I agree with. But I wanted to go back to what Frank said just now about this question of campus.
We'll go back to you, but this question of the two definitions of liberalism, do you have a response to that?
I don't. If you want to characterize it as wishy-washy, I can certainly live with that. I do think I guess I don't have a complete read on what the difference is. I think, Osita, you are taking maybe a more a legalistic definition, which I also embrace, that is grounded in individual rights. To the extent I'm being wishy-washy or sentimental, I guess I'm talking about an ethos or a spirit of engagement and debate, and I don't think that those are and intellectual contest that I don't think actually is wishy-washy in practice. I think it's pretty ferocious if it's done properly. And it's not about civility, it's not about being nice to each other, it's not about sitting down and saying kumbaya. It's like engaging really big ideas in a fierce contest that allows us to grope our way towards progress and some apprehension of the truth. That to me is liberalism. And I honestly actually no, I would take it back. I don't accept wishy-washy as a description of that attitude. I don't think that that's fair, or to use your term, a generous characterization.
Well, look, I think that there have been all kinds of people throughout history who've rigorously pursued truth and had philosophical arguments, who nevertheless believed at the end of the day that the state should have the right to enforce its will upon and impose its will upon people. The idea of having debate is not, I think, something that is unique to the liberal tradition. You've had all kinds of people from all kinds of perspectives and all kinds of backgrounds argue that philosophical debate is important. That to me is not an exclusive property of the liberal political tradition. And I think we confuse ourselves when we say that that's what it is, because it's not what it is. I don't think that you will find people who here, who teach political philosophy will tell you that arguing is what liberal, it's part of it, it's what you would expect to come out of a liberal society more so than other kinds of societies. But I don't think it is it is definitional. And again, when you insist that something that is so, I think, tethered to an important set of foundational principles, those principles are some things that your enemies disagree with and that they are rejecting and they're attacking. If that is not actually true, and you're instead disagreeing about the extent to which the values you're describing have applied to in a particular situation, I think it's a mistake to do that. If it's really the case that what we're arguing about is whether or not people have been open enough to certain ideas, and they should as a matter of personal practice and a matter of engaging with journalism and so on, no, those are habits that I think are important to cultivate. When people say, as Jonathan Chait did, the only reason why progressives haven't done the kind of grand illiberal acts that we saw happen under communist regimes is that they don't yet have the powers of the state, and that implying that if they did, I would start sending white people to the gulag or something. That to me is not really like a serious and I think factually informed understanding of what the arguments that people are actually advancing in the interest of racial justice, in the interest of justice for transgender people, in the interest of justice for Palestinians. And if we actually listened to these groups, I think we'd find that we're not actually at war with about liberal values, that we're having certain disputes within institutions that we'd expect to have in a free, democratic society. We have intense arguments about the values that our institutions should hold.
If I could just distill quickly, and then we'll disappear. What I think is the ultimate disagreement here is that it came out in the question about liberalism, is that I think Osita's emphasis in liberalism is emancipation and freedom. And I think James comes from a different tradition of liberalism that emphasizes that emancipation and freedom are only possible if you have a series of institutional arrangements that help deal with the fact that people have very different ideas about emancipation and freedom, which are frequently in conflict, and that it requires an ethos and a certain set of rules and norms in order to mediate those two things. And I think it's maybe there's that difference of emphasis is at kind of the crux and core of the debate. But I am going to leave it right there because I've already gone over time. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you for having this.
Thank you for your patience.